Why can't I just enjoy a game for once? Hello there, gamerinos and gamerinas. Welcome to UnicornStorm. This is Rady, and today I'm going to tell you whether or not Rainbow Billy and the Curse of the Leviathan is worth your while. In this game you have to travel the monochrome sea after the titular Leviathan robbed the world of all the color, and now you have to defeat his minions and bring the color back to the world. A pretty clever marriage of setting, art style and mechanics, I have to say. The game was funded through Kickstarter and I was one of the backers. The crowdfunding campaign started about half a year after the release of Cuphead, and when comparing the art styles of the two games, it stands to reason that this game was at least a tiny bit inspired by the beautiful but incredibly punishing boss rush game. This game though went in a completely different direction and only shares the general art design. Same as Cuphead, this game goes for the 1930s Disney or Fleischer aesthetic, with the round, bouncy characters with huge expressive eyes. And while still images look pleasant, albeit not as detailed as Cuphead by far, as soon as it is in motion, you'll see the difference in quality between the games, visually. There are a lot less frames of animation for each character, and there were a lot more shortcuts taken during animation. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that not every frame is hand-drawn, but some moving parts, like for example the arms, just stick to the character's shoulders and just rotate a bit while moving. It doesn't look bad, but in a post-Cuphead world, you really have to give it your all if you try to emulate the same art style. Also, some of the artwork in the game looks horrendous. It's just scaled up really badly and looks like a pixelated mess. How could this happen in a game all about a striking art design? And well, I already mentioned the lack of detail, but this is at times really glaring. The game started out as a 2D top-down game and looked a lot more detailed, so I guess it was the transition to a fully 3D world that needed the object count to go down a bit. It's understandable, but it just leads to some areas looking really bland. That said, I like the style of flat 2D characters moving around in 3D environments. It's just that the environments are a bit empty and samey. Not to say there isn't some variety to the environments. Every chapter is set in another part of the world and comes with its own landscape and color scheme. Even the battle screen changes according to where the battle takes place. And I guess the devs took some inspiration from Paper Mario, with the battle being fought inside a cardboard box and the background being papercraft decoration. So there is a lot of creativity to be found in the art design, be it in the environment or the characters. It's just that the level design itself is a bit bland. Another thing is the camera. When you're on the open sea, you have full control over the camera, but when you're on an island, the camera perspective is fixed. So the game always controls what you can and can't see, which would normally lead to the most optimal player experience and the ability to hide collectibles really well. And while the game does use the fixed camera for some collectibles, a lot of the time the camera perspective doesn't really work as intended. At least I hope they didn't intend for it to behave in that way. When you have to pass behind another object, the camera doesn't account for this and you have to navigate blindly. The camera could have moved above the character, or the object could have gone transparent, or maybe the character's silhouette could have always been visible, like they did in Mario Sunshine, but nothing of that is here. Then there are platforming sections where the fixed perspective makes it hard to assess your jumps. It never gets too bad, especially since you don't lose any health and there's no life system or anything. But it's an oversight. One of many. The game changed a lot over the course of development, and not always for the better. It started as a Zelda-like with sea exploration and turn-based battles. Sea exploration might look better than it did in the beginning, but got really dumped down and is more a way to gate off content until you played enough of the required missions first. You can only sail the seas for a limited amount of time until you are out of fuel and get transported back to the last island you visited. And it's not that you have to manage your fuel, because you automatically refuel when you're in a safe area. This is just a mechanic that stops you from sailing too far out into the sea. So if an unexplored island is just too far away to reach, you have to play the main story a bit longer until your fuel capacity increases. There's also nothing to find in the sea that's not in the close vicinity of an explorable island. So yeah, sailing is only a method of going from A to B and nothing more. Which is a shame, because the steamboat was there from the beginning and even part of the game's title before they changed the name from Steamboat Billy to Rainbow Billy. The Zelda elements are also gone. The game is now more of a simple platformer with some puzzles for good measure. You sometimes have to activate a switch to open a path or have platforms appear. You sometimes have to solve a maze, but it never gets too deep or too involved. Which is fine, the game is more laid back, it's more of a chill experience and not a tense challenge. And I can appreciate that. I just think that they should have dropped the last few Zelda-ish elements as well, if that's what they were going for. Why do I need to sluggishly destroy barrels or boxes to collect coins? Coins I only need to buy things that I can also find lying around in the environment as well. Why do I need to return to a previously explored island when I get a new ability to find more collectibles? Why isn't every island self-contained and has its very own challenges and rewards, independent from any other abilities? And speaking of abilities, what is the point of having your sentient fishing rod and also smashing device exclaim about not wanting to hit some dirt piles and wanting you to find a shovel, just to tell you a few moments later that he is indeed able to dig up dirt and is happy to do so? Another thing they changed was the combat system. Or more, the outcome of battles, as many of the systems stayed true to what they were planned to be in the beginning. They always planned to have minigames and quicktime events during combat, and it was always planned to have you collect defeated monsters and recruit them into your team. But instead of inflicting damage on the enemy and deplete their HP, you now have to calm them down and befriend them. And for that you use your growing arsenal of recruited monsters. You don't add them to a party, but instead they are played from your hand like cards during battle. Every round of battle you draw a certain number of random cards to your hand, and then you can play a few of them onto spots on the battlefield. You have no control over how many spots there will be in battle, but that doesn't really matter and is part of the puzzle. Every monster has 3 different friendship attacks and a special ability that is triggered whenever it is placed onto the front of a row. Well, sometimes you have to satisfy other conditions. So how does combat work? Every battle has you confront only one monster, but sometimes they have some minions with them. The minions are either only here to distract you or are part of a puzzle to get some collectibles. To end the battle, you only need to defeat the main monster though. You now have to convince the monster to join your team by talking to them and have them reveal their weakness and then attack with the corresponding abilities. By that I mean that every monster has a list of symbols that you have to fill up. But you don't know beforehand what these symbols are, so you have to talk to them and use special abilities to reveal them and select the correct symbols from your team's abilities, and complete the attack minigames flawlessly for maximum effect. Yeah, you don't get a bit more out of your attack for perfect execution, you only get punished for playing less than perfect. After every turn, the enemy as well as all their minions get to attack you and deplete your morale a bit. Since there are no character levels or stats in this game, there isn't really any difference in how much damage you receive in each battle. The normal monsters all inflict the same amount of damage and minions inflict about half of it, or have a different effect like blocking some of your abilities or allies. Sometimes the monsters themselves have a bonus ability like increasing the difficulty of your attack minigames, scaring part of your active team away, or taking away some of your allies still on your hand. There are a lot of little gimmicks during these battles, so it never gets stale. I just think it's a missed opportunity that the minigames are only for attack and not defense, like it is for example in Undertale. Maybe enemies could have done a bit more damage, but only if you messed up during the minigame, and every monster had their own variation to that minigame. But it's not that big of a deal. The attack minigames are varied enough, and the stronger you build your attack by adding monsters to the same row, the more difficult it gets. The social element of the battles though is half-baked at best. Battles always start with you having to talk to the monster. You can listen to them first and get an idea about how to best respond to them, and when you talk to them you get a selection of, most of the time, 3 responses, and generally one of them leads you to receiving damage and the other to reveal the enemy's weakness to differing amounts. But sometimes you get the opportunity to heal up or prevent an enemy's attack or ability, which is neat enough. But most of the time you are just expected to blow sugar up the enemy's ass. The game is all about facing insecurities, overcoming fears, true friendship and all that good stuff. But during a confrontation, as the game calls it, you are expected to lie to your opponent, to only tell them what they want to hear, and not be honest and truly compassionate. Antagonizing the enemy leads to you getting hurt, but so does just standing up to them or call them out on their bullshit. I like the idea that the developers are trying to get across, but the execution is questionable. I really thought about having the kids at my daycare play this as kind of a lesson on non-violent conflict resolution, but I don't think that would teach them the right values. I don't think the game is bad for children, just that the message is questionable and so it should just be considered as some mindless, light-hearted entertainment. Nothing more. Also, a few times it didn't really look like the enemy's response matched my selection. I said one thing and the enemy responded with something completely different. The different enemy encounters don't have their own handcrafted dialogue tree. While there are some specific dialogues for each combat encounter, a lot of your selections are reused for multiple monsters and the monsters themselves just cycle through a handful of lines. So it doesn't match up every time and just comes off as weird, which shouldn't happen in a game about talking your way out of a fight. But no, I don't think the game is bad. Maybe a bit misguided. But it's good fun for what it's worth. The art style is cute and every collectible monster has their own unique design as well as its own personal backstory. It isn't a literary masterpiece, but it does go the extra mile to have every NPC have a bit of a personality and a struggle to overcome by receiving gifts and candy that you obtain by completing a silly little fishing minigame. Yeah, again, the execution is a bit weird and weak, but it's inoffensive. What the game is full of, though, is a lot of funny little jokes and details. A lot of the characters sport weird and punny names, like your boat that's called Friendship, you get it? Or the fishing rod that's called Rodrigo. One of the game's collectibles are these negative thoughts that you have to purify to get some upgrades to your ship, or your character, or your photo camera. Well, you can view these thoughts in your collections menu and just read their weird musings. Like, for example, if you're reading this, does that mean you're hearing my voice with your eyes? Exciting! If I punch myself in the face and it hurts, does that make me weak or strong? Aren't all potatoes technically mashed potatoes once you've eaten them? Knowing you'll one day save the world of imagination by bringing back its colors, does it fill you with determination? Wait, hold up. And of course, the most daddiest of dad jokes. Skyscrapers must know lots of exciting tales since they have so many stories, right? Pretty much everything has some flavor text, be it NPCs, thoughts, gifts or Gumby Bear fish. The devs really want you to have a good old time with this game, to have some lighthearted fun, to not worry too much about leveling or dying. Yeah, the dialogues are often a bit ham-fisted and the friendship mechanic is a bit shallow, but there's still a lot of heart in all the conversations. The music is really good a lot of the times, with different styles matching the environment. It can be dreamy, it can be jazzy, it can be goofy. The few times the music isn't great, it is just inoffensive background noise, but it never gets bad. It doesn't really invoke the 1930s cartoon style, but it's still pretty enjoyable. What isn't enjoyable though is the horrible optimization on Switch. I haven't played the game on another platform, so it might be better on PC or another console, but on Switch you have to deal with constant frame drops, freezes, and a pretty long loading screen on startup. Pretty much every time I entered my Steamboat to travel to another island, the game began to stutter, and it did the same when I approached another island. When exploring the islands, the game randomly freezes for a few frames all the time. It's really great to try to get through a platforming section while the game freezes constantly. And I don't think the game is just too demanding in any way for the Nintendo Switch. It's just really badly optimized. So yeah, I'd advise against getting this on Switch as long as there isn't a patch out that fixes this issue. But on the whole, this is a fun game. It never gets too deep or challenging, and I guess it's best enjoyed in short bursts. So just explore a few islands and save the monsters living there. Don't play it for hours on end because it could get a bit repetitive. And when you don't want to fight monsters, well, there's nothing much you can do about that, because you need to defeat the monsters to bring back the color in an area so that you can expand the part of the sea you are able to explore. But you can also hunt for all the little stray thoughts, or go fishing, care for your buddies and help them overcome their fears. Just don't take it all too seriously. And with that, I bid you adieu. Have a great day. That's it from Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game.